Growing up as twins, Leo and I were always a package deal. Wherever I went, he followed, and whatever trouble he caused, I somehow got dragged into. It was the kind of bond you'd expect from two boys who shared everything, from our childhood bedroom to a birthday cake every year. We were close, but even as kids, I could tell that Leo hated the comparisons. He was the funny one, while I was the responsible one. Teachers would smile and say, "Oh, you must be Leo's twin," whenever I walked into a classroom, but they never said it the other way around. Over time, his resentment grew, even if he hid it behind his signature grin. Life moved on, and so did we, or so I thought. I met Rachel 3 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. She was all warmth and light, with a wit sharp enough to keep me on my toes. She wasn't like the women Leo usually dated, who were drawn to his charm but faded away once they realized he didn't have much depth. Rachel was different. She made me feel like I was the center of her world, and for the first time, I thought I'd found someone I wanted to spend forever with. Leo met Rachel a few weeks after we started dating. He was, predictably, his loud and magnetic self, cracking jokes and giving her that sly smile that worked on just about anyone. Rachel laughed politely but didn't seem overly impressed, which secretly made me proud. For once, Leo wasn't the center of attention. I'd found someone who chose me. But that's when the subtle jabs began. "Don't you think Rachel's a little too serious for you?" Leo asked one night while we were watching TV. I shrugged it off. "I like that about her. She keeps me grounded." He smirked. "Sure. Or maybe you just like her because she's impressed by boring stuff like spreadsheets and budgets." I rolled my eyes. "Not everything has to be a competition, Leo." He laughed, but the look in his eyes said otherwise. Fast forward to last month. I'd been secretly planning to propose to Rachel for weeks. I'd booked a reservation at her favorite restaurant, picked out the perfect ring, and even rehearsed my speech in front of the mirror a dozen times. I was so excited I let my guard down and told Leo. "Wow," he said, holding the ring up to the light. "You really went all out, huh?" "Of course. She's worth it," I replied, tucking the ring back into the box. Leo leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing on his lips. "Good luck, man. I'm sure she'll say yes." At the time, I didn't think much of it. It was Leo being Leo, teasing, a little smug, but ultimately harmless. Or so I thought. 3 days later, everything fell apart. 3 days later, I came home from work to find Rachel sitting on the couch, her arms crossed and her face pale. Her usual warmth was gone, replaced by something I couldn't place. Anger? Sadness? Disappointment? "Hey, babe," I started cautiously, setting my keys down. "What's wrong?" She stared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line, before finally asking, "Why didn't you just tell me?" I blinked. "Tell you what?" Her voice cracked. "That you already proposed. Why would you make me go through this whole charade like it didn't happen?" I froze, confusion washing over me. "Rachel, I haven't proposed yet." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Right. So who was it that got down on one knee at Lardon Bistro 2 nights ago? Who handed me a ring and said we should start forever together? Because, Lucas, it sure looked like you." My stomach dropped. Lardon Bistro was the place I'd booked for the real proposal. The realization hit me like a freight train. Leo? Only Leo could have done this. Only he would know where I planned to propose and what kind of ring I'd chosen. It wasn't just the act that stung. It was the intent. He didn't just steal the spotlight. He stole my moment, my future. "Rachel, listen to me," I said, stepping closer, my voice shaking. "That wasn't me. It was my brother." She looked up, stunned. "Your brother?" "Leo," I confirmed. He must have pretended to be me." Rachel's eyes narrowed, but her confusion didn't waver. "Why would he do that? Lucas, this doesn't make sense." "Because," I hesitated, the words sour in my mouth. "Because he's jealous. He's always been jealous." Her hands trembled in her lap as she absorbed my words. "He dressed like you? He knew what you were planning." I nodded, shame burning in my chest. "I told him. I showed him the ring. I trusted him." Rachel covered her mouth with her hands, shaking her head as tears filled her eyes. "I thought it was real, Lucas. I thought it was you." I sank down next to her, my own hands trembling. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I had no idea he would do this. I swear, I was planning to propose for real. She didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. I don't know if I can do this. Do what? I whispered, fear clawing at my chest. This. She gestured between us. How am I supposed to trust you when you can't even control what your brother does? How do I know this won't happen again? Rachel, I will fix this, I said desperately. I'll talk to him. I'll make him confess. Please, don't let him ruin what we have. Her silence was deafening. That night, I stormed into Leo's apartment, my heart pounding with rage. He opened the door with his signature grin, as if nothing had happened. Lucas, he said cheerfully, what brings you here? I didn't answer. Instead, I shoved him back into the room and slammed the door behind me. What the hell is wrong with you? Leo raised an eyebrow, still maddeningly calm. What's this about? You know exactly what it's about. I snapped. Rachel told me everything. You stole my proposal. You pretended to be me. He smirked, leaning casually against the counter. She really believed it, huh? Guess I'm better at being you than you are. My fists clenched at my sides. This isn't a joke, Leo. You've crossed the line. Do you have any idea what you've done? He shrugged. Relax, Lucas. I was just trying to show her that maybe she's settling. She deserves someone with a little more charisma. You don't love her, I said, my voice low and cold. You don't even know her. Maybe not, he admitted, his grin fading slightly. But I do know that she'll eventually realize you're not enough for her. I just sped up the process. I couldn't hold back anymore. I lunged at him, grabbing the front of his shirt. If you ever go near her again, I swear to God. He laughed bitterly. What are you gonna do, Lucas? Tell Mom and Dad? Cut me out of your life? You've always been the golden boy. I'm just the screw-up, remember? This is who I am. I let go of him, disgusted. You're pathetic, Leo, and you're going to fix this. How? He scoffed. She already thinks I'm you. What do you want me to do? Tell her I'm the evil twin. You'll confess, I said firmly. You'll tell her everything. And if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. His smirk faltered, but he didn't argue. As I walked out, I knew this was far from over. Leo wasn't the type to back down, and I had no idea what he'd do next. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let him destroy my life. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced with every possible scenario. What Leo might do next, whether Rachel would ever forgive me, and how I could put my life back together after my brother's betrayal. By morning, I knew one thing. I needed to see Rachel. I needed to tell her everything, no matter how hard it was. When I knocked on her apartment door, my heart felt like it might pound out of my chest. She opened it slowly, her expression guarded. Her eyes were puffy, and it was clear she hadn't slept much either. Can we talk? I asked, my voice soft. She stepped aside, letting me in without a word. I could feel the tension in the air, heavy and suffocating. I sat on the edge of her couch, my hands clasped tightly together as she stood across from me, arms crossed defensively. Rachel, I began, my voice shaky, you have no idea how sorry I am. What Leo did, what I let him do, was inexcusable. I should have seen it coming. I should have protected you from him. She didn't say anything, but her gaze softened slightly. I confronted him last night, I continued. I made him admit what he did. He said he'll come clean to you. Rachel sighed and sat down across from me, her shoulders slumping. And what? I'm supposed to just forget this happened? Pretend it didn't shake everything I thought I knew about you? Her words cut deep, but I nodded. No, you don't have to forget, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But please, Rachel, don't let him take us away from each other. Don't let him win. She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine. You know what hurts the most, Lucas? It's not just what he did. It's that he knew everything about you. Your plans, the ring, even where you were going to propose. And he turned it into a weapon. That means you trusted him, and he used that trust to hurt both of us. I know, I whispered. I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong person. But I'm trusting you now, to give me the chance to make this right. Rachel's expression softened further, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hope. Leo doesn't just want to ruin our relationship, she said quietly. He wants to ruin you, and I won't let him. I felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. Rachel wasn't finished. I'll hear him out, she said. If he confesses, maybe we can start to move forward. But, Lucas, if there's one more secret, one more betrayal, I don't know if I can handle it. I understand, I said, my voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside me. No more secrets. I promise. 2 days later, Rachel agreed to meet with Leo. I insisted on being there, but she asked me to wait outside. If I'm going to get the truth from him, I need to do it alone, she explained. I reluctantly agreed, pacing outside her apartment while she let Leo Indiana. My fists clenched as I imagined what lies he might spin, but I had to trust Rachel to see through him. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slow. At one point, I leaned against the door, straining to hear their voices. I couldn't make out much, but I caught snippets, Rachel's sharp questions, Leo's smug laughter, and then something unexpected, silence. When the door finally opened, Leo strolled out with a smirk plastered across his face. Well, he said, clapping me on the shoulder, I'd say good luck, but I don't think it'll help you. What did you say to her? I snapped, shoving his hand away. Relax, little brother, he said, walking down the hall. I told her the truth. Whether she wants to believe it is up to her. I didn't wait to hear more. I rushed inside to find Rachel sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. My stomach twisted at the sight. Rachel? I said softly, kneeling in front of her. What happened? What did he say? She lifted her head, her eyes red but resolute. He confessed, Lucas. Everything. Relief coursed through me, but it was short-lived as she continued. But he also told me something else, something you didn't. Her voice wavered. He said this isn't the first time he's done something like this. I froze. What? Leo said he's been sabotaging your relationships for years, Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. He claimed you always turn a blind eye to it because you're too scared to confront him. Is that true? I felt the blood drain from my face. Rachel, Is it true, Lucas? She repeated, her voice rising. Yes, I admitted, shame flooding me. He's interfered before, but not like this. Never like this. Rachel stood up, pacing the room. So all this time, you've known what he's capable of, and you still let him into our lives? You still trusted him with our future? I thought I could handle him, I said desperately. I thought he'd changed. Well, he hasn't, she said, her voice breaking. And now I don't know if I can trust you either. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up a hand. I need time, Lucas, she said quietly. Time to think. To figure out if I can move past this. Please, just go. I wanted to fight, to stay and prove I could fix this, but the look in her eyes stopped me. All I could do was nod and leave, my heart shattering with every step. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Rachel's silence was deafening. I sent her messages every day. Apologies, reassurances, anything I could think of, but they all went unanswered. I couldn't blame her. She needed time, and I had no choice but to wait. But waiting didn't mean sitting idly by. I wasn't going to let Leo get away with this. Not this time. He'd ruined enough, and if Rachel and I had any chance of rebuilding what we had, I needed to put an end to his interference for good. I decided to visit my parents. If anyone could get through to Leo, it was them. At least, that's what I hoped. When I arrived, my mom greeted me with a worried expression. Lucas, what's going on? Leo called us last night, and he seemed off. Off? I repeated, stepping inside. What did he say? She hesitated. He said you've been blaming him for things he didn't do. That you're trying to turn Rachel against him. I felt my blood boil. Of course he did. Did he tell you what he actually did? Lucas, calm down, my dad said, walking into the room. We're not taking sides here. Just tell us what's going on. So I did. I told them everything. How Leo had impersonated me to propose to Rachel, how he'd confessed to sabotaging my past relationships, and how this latest stunt had nearly destroyed my future with the woman I love. By the time I finished, my mom was pale, and my dad looked like he was about to explode. "Is this true?" my mom whispered. "He really did all that?" I nodded, my jaw tight. "And he's been doing it for years." I didn't want to believe it before, but this time, he crossed a line I can't ignore. My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough is enough. That boy has been causing trouble his whole life, and we've let him get away with it because we didn't want to push him further away. But this is unforgivable. What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice quiet. "We'll talk to him," my mom said, her voice trembling. "And if he doesn't take responsibility, we'll have to make some hard decisions." That evening, my parents called a family meeting. I wasn't thrilled about seeing Leo again so soon, but I needed to hear what he had to say and make sure he didn't twist the story any further. When Leo walked in, he was as smug as ever, though his confidence faltered when he saw the looks on our parents' faces. "What's this about?" he asked, dropping onto the couch like he didn't have a care in the world. "You know exactly what this is about," my dad said sharply. "Lucas told us everything." Leo's grin faded. "Oh, so you're just going to believe him?" "Of course you are. He's always been the favorite." "This isn't about favorites," my mom said, her voice firm. "It's about what you did. Is it true, Leo? Did you really pretend to be Lucas and propose to Rachel?" For a moment, Leo didn't answer. Then he shrugged, leaning back like this was all some big joke. "Yeah, I did." "So what?" She deserved to know she had options. "You're unbelievable," I spat, my hands curling into fists. "You didn't do this for her. You did it because you can't stand to see me happy." Leo's eyes flashed with anger. "Maybe I did. So what? You've always had everything, Lucas. The grades, the career, the girl. And I'm just supposed to sit back and watch you live this perfect life while I get scraps?" "This isn't about scraps, Leo," my dad interrupted. "This is about you taking responsibility for your actions. You hurt your brother, you hurt Rachel, and you've been sabotaging him for years. That stops now." Leo stood up, his face red with rage. "Oh, I see how it is. You're all ganging up on me now. Fine. Go ahead and take his side. That's what you've always done." "No one's taking sides," my mom said, her voice breaking. "We're trying to help you before you lose everything." Leo laughed bitterly. "Too late for that, Mom. I lost everything a long time ago. And you know what? I'm done trying to fix it." With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the house, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. After Leo's outburst, I felt an odd mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I'd finally stood up to him, but sadness because, despite everything, he was still my brother. I didn't want to lose him completely, but I also couldn't let him keep tearing my life apart. Rachel called me that night. Her voice was softer than I'd expected, but there was still a guarded edge to it. "I heard from your mom," she said. "She told me about the family meeting." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, it didn't go great." "She also told me something else," Rachel continued. "That Leo confessed to everything." "He did," I said, my voice quiet. "But I don't think he feels sorry. Not yet." Rachel sighed. "Lucas, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About you, about Leo, about everything. And I want to try. I want to see if we can move past this." My heart soared, but I kept my voice steady. "You do?" "Yes," she said firmly. "But I need to know that you're going to keep him out of our lives. I can't go through this again, Lucas." "I won't. I promise," I said without hesitation. "Leo is done causing problems for us. I'll make sure of it." And I meant it. Leo might be my brother, but Rachel was my future. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again. In the weeks that followed, life started to settle. Rachel and I worked hard to rebuild our trust, piece by piece. We talked openly about everything, about Leo, about my failure to set boundaries with him, and about how I could make her feel safe moving forward. It wasn't easy, but Rachel's willingness to forgive gave me the strength to fight for us. But Leo wasn't done. Not entirely. It started with small things. A text here or there, dripping with sarcasm. "How's the happy couple?" Still pretending everything's fine? A call at midnight that went unanswered. A mutual friend letting me know that Leo had been talking about moving across the country, claiming I'd stolen everything from him. I ignored it all, until one day, I didn't have to. I was out running errands when my mom called, her voice shaky. "Lucas, it's Leo. He wants to talk to you. He says it's important." I sighed, leaning against my car. "Mom, I don't know if I—" "Please," she cut me off. "He's not himself. He says he's leaving, and this is the last chance to fix things. I think you should go." As much as I hated the idea, I knew she was right. I couldn't let this chapter end without at least trying to make peace. So I agreed. When I arrived at the diner where Leo had asked to meet, I barely recognized him. He looked worn down, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. The smug grin I'd come to resent was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly as I slid into the booth across from him. I didn't respond immediately, my emotions swirling. Finally, I asked, "What do you want, Leo?" He hesitated, fiddling with the edge of his coffee cup. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, his voice bitter. "I'm sorry, okay? For everything. For pretending to be you, for messing with your relationships, for being a terrible brother." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Why now? What's changed?" He laughed hollowly. "I'm leaving. Moving to the West Coast. Figured it's about time I stopped screwing up your life and start figuring out mine." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him to stay far away, that he'd done enough damage and I didn't care what happened to him. But another part of me, the part that remembered the brother who used to share birthday cakes and dreams with me, felt a pang of sadness. "Leo," I said finally, my voice softer than I expected. "You didn't just hurt me. You hurt Rachel. You've pushed away everyone who ever cared about you." "I know," he said, his voice cracking, "and I have to live with that. But I just needed you to know that I didn't do it because I hated you. I did it because I hated myself." The raw honesty in his words left me speechless. For the first time, I saw the cracks in his armor, the deep insecurities that had driven his actions. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it made me realize something. Leo wasn't just my tormentor. He was a broken person, struggling to find his place. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said quietly. "But I can't let you back into my life, not right now. I need to protect what I have with Rachel." He nodded, his eyes downcast. "I get it. I really do." As he stood to leave, he hesitated, turning back to me. "For what it's worth, I hope it works out for you. You deserve it." Epilogue. Leo left town the next day. I haven't heard much from him since, though my parents occasionally mention that he's trying to turn his life around. Part of me hopes he succeeds, but I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. Rachel and I have grown stronger through everything. A year later, I proposed to her again, this time without any interference. She said yes, and our wedding was the happiest day of my life. Leo wasn't there, but in a way, I was okay with that. It wasn't a story about him anymore. It was about Rachel and me, about love and forgiveness, and about choosing the life we wanted together. And this time, no one could take that away.